In the month of November 2023, a 36-year-old Colombian vessel operator descended into the hull of a self-propelled semi-submersible as it navigated 170 nautical miles west of Ecuador in the eastern Pacific Ocean. He wasn't commanding a legitimate cargo transport. He was piloting 2,523 kilograms of cocaine worth $75 million towards Central American shores, a patched member of a transnational drug trafficking organization. This documentary aims to present an honest and unfiltered account of the case surrounding former narco submarine captain Henry Aguirre Valois. Aguirre Valois is believed to have been born in either 1987 or 1988, as he was documented as being 36 years of age in May 2024. He had previously been convicted and sentenced in 2019 for trafficking cocaine on a vessel subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, but that prior imprisonment had done nothing to deter his return to the narco submarine trade. The details surrounding Aguirre Valois' early life and background remain largely undocumented in public records, as authorities focused their investigations on his criminal activities rather than his personal history. What is documented is his trajectory through the narco submarine trade. Court records confirm Aguirre Valois had been arrested and convicted once before for the identical offense. In 2019, he was sentenced to federal prison for trafficking cocaine on a vessel subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. After serving a portion of that sentence, Aguirre Valois was released and returned to Colombia. The imprisonment, which should have served as a definitive deterrent, instead functioned merely as an interruption. Within months of his release, Aguirre Valois had reconnected with transnational criminal organizations operating along Colombia's Pacific coast. His prior experience piloting semi-submersible vessels made him a valuable asset to traffickers who required skilled operators willing to navigate thousands of nautical miles across international waters while evading maritime patrols. The financial incentives were substantial, and the criminal networks were willing to overlook his prior conviction. In the month of November 2023, Aguirre Valois would once again assume command of a cocaine-laden vessel, this time carrying an even larger payload than his previous voyage. On November 20th, 2023, Aguirre Valois and 3 co-defendants departed from a location along Colombia's Pacific coast aboard what authorities would later classify as a self-propelled semi-submersible vessel. The vessel was a closed-hull craft constructed specifically for transporting bulk quantities of narcotics across vast stretches of ocean while remaining largely undetectable to maritime patrols. Semi-submersible vessels of this type typically measure between 40 and 60 feet in length and are fabricated from fiberglass reinforced with resin, painted in ocean colors to blend with surrounding waters. The hull rides low in the water with only a small portion visible above the surface, making radar detection significantly more difficult than traditional speedboats or cargo vessels. The vessel Aguirre Valois commanded had been loaded with 2,023 kilograms of cocaine hydrochloride, packaged in waterproof bundles and secured within the cargo hold. The drugs, which United States Coast Guard officials estimated had an approximate wholesale value of $75 million, were destined for Central America, where they would be offloaded and transported overland toward the United States consumer market. The 4-man crew included Aguirre Valois as the primary operator, along with 3 additional Colombian nationals, whose identities were documented during their subsequent arrest. The vessel's route would take them northwest through international waters of the eastern Pacific Ocean, a journey that typically required several days of continuous navigation while avoiding detection by maritime law enforcement patrols from multiple nations. United States Coast Guard operations in the eastern Pacific Ocean maintained continuous surveillance of known narco-trafficking routes, throughout late 2023. The Coast Guard cutter Waisha, a 418-foot national security cutter equipped with advanced radar and surveillance technology, was conducting routine maritime patrol operations in international waters when intelligence indicated suspicious vessel activity in the region. Coast Guard personnel utilize a combination of radar detection, aerial surveillance from embarked helicopters, and intelligence sharing with partner nations to identify potential narco-submarine transits. The low-profile design of semi-submersible vessels presents significant detection challenges, as their fiberglass construction and minimal radar signature allow them to operate largely undetected during favorable weather conditions. However, coordinated surveillance efforts between United States Coast Guard units, Drug Enforcement Administration intelligence analysts, and regional maritime forces had identified patterns of departure from Columbian coastal areas. The Waisha adjusted its patrol route based on this intelligence and positioned itself along the projected transit corridor. The pursuit of semi-submersible vessels requires precise timing and coordination, as the vessels can alter course rapidly and the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean provides numerous escape routes. Members of the United States Coast Guard cutter Waisha interdicted the semi-submersible vessel approximately 170 nautical miles west of Ecuador in international waters. The interception occurred after Coast Guard personnel visually identified the vessel's low-profile silhouette during daylight hours and maneuvered the Waisha to intercept. Coast Guard law enforcement officers deployed from the cutter in a high-speed, rigid-hull inflatable boat and approached the semi-submersible while it was still underway. The boarding team ordered the vessel to stop and the crew to surface, which the operators complied with after a brief pursuit. Upon boarding, Coast Guard personnel secured all 4 crew members and conducted an inspection of the vessel's cargo compartment. Inside the sealed hull, officers discovered numerous waterproof packages containing what field tests identified as cocaine hydrochloride. The United States Coast Guard seized 2,523 kilograms of cocaine from the vessel, which has an approximate wholesale value of $75 million. Coast Guard personnel documented the evidence through photography and chain of custody procedures before transferring the cocaine, the crew, and the vessel itself to Coast Guard custody. The 4 Colombian nationals were detained aboard the Waisha and transported to United States jurisdiction for prosecution. The semi-submersible vessel was inspected for construction details and navigational equipment before being rendered inoperable. Following the interception, federal prosecutors in the Middle District of Florida formally charged Aguirre Valois and his 3 co-defendants with conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute 5 kilograms or more of cocaine while aboard a vessel subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. The charges were filed under federal maritime drug trafficking statutes, which grant United States jurisdiction over narcotics offenses committed aboard vessels in international waters when those vessels lack proper registration or flag state authority. Aguirre Valois was charged with conspiracy to possess cocaine with intent to distribute and trafficking cocaine on a vessel, offenses that carry a maximum possible sentence of life in federal prison. Court documents noted that Aguirre Valois had previously been convicted and sentenced in 2019 for trafficking cocaine on a vessel subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, making this his 2nd federal conviction for the identical offense. All 4 defendants were held without bail pending prosecution, as federal prosecutors argued they posed significant flight risks given their lack of ties to the United States and the severity of the charges. In the months following his arrest, federal investigators conducted interviews with Aguirre Valois regarding his involvement in the narco-submarine operation and his connections to transnational criminal organizations. Unlike some defendants who maintain innocence or refuse cooperation, Aguirre Valois acknowledged the facts surrounding his apprehension. Court documents indicate he confirmed his role as the vessel operator and admitted he had been aware the cargo consisted of cocaine destined for illicit distribution. Investigators documented that Aguirre Valois had been recruited by criminal networks operating along Colombia's Pacific coast due to his prior experience navigating semi-submersible vessels across international waters. He confirmed he had agreed to pilot the vessel in exchange for financial compensation, though the specific amount was not disclosed in publicly available court records. When confronted with his 2019 conviction for an identical offense, Aguirre Valois acknowledged his previous imprisonment but offered no substantive explanation for his decision to return to narco-submarine operations following his release. On May 24, 2024, Aguirre Valois entered a guilty plea to the charge of conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute cocaine while aboard a vessel subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. By pleading guilty, he waived his right to trial and accepted responsibility for the offense, positioning himself for a potentially reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation and admission. The sentencing hearing took place in October 2024 before a federal judge in the Middle District of Florida. Aguirre Valois was sentenced to 16 years in federal prison for conspiring to possess 2,023 kilograms of cocaine on a vessel with intent to distribute. The sentence reflected both the severity of the offense and his status as a repeat offender, having been previously convicted in 2019 for trafficking cocaine on a vessel subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Aguirre Valois is currently serving his sentence in a federal correctional facility. The three co-defendants who were apprehended alongside Aguirre Valois also faced prosecution in the Middle District of Florida, though the specific outcomes of their cases were not detailed in publicly available court records. The impact of Aguirre Valois' operation extended beyond the immediate seizure of narcotics. The 2,523 kilograms of cocaine interdicted by the United States Coast Guard represented a significant quantity of narcotics that would have otherwise reached distribution networks throughout Central America and the United States. Coast Guard officials estimated the wholesale value at $75 million, though the eventual street value after distribution would have been substantially higher. The seizure prevented the drugs from entering consumer markets, where they would have contributed to addiction, overdose deaths, and the financing of additional criminal operations. The secondary impact was the intelligence value the interception provided to maritime law enforcement agencies. Each narco-submarine interdiction yields critical data regarding vessel construction methods, navigation routes, crew recruitment patterns, and operational procedures employed by transnational criminal organizations. Aguirre Valois' case provided a clear-cut example of recidivism within the narco-submarine trade, demonstrating that previous convictions do not necessarily deter experienced operators from returning to criminal activities. The case also highlighted the persistent demand for skilled vessel operators within drug trafficking networks, as criminal organizations continued to recruit individuals with prior maritime experience despite their criminal records. The prosecution served as a demonstration of international cooperation between maritime enforcement agencies and established legal precedent for prosecuting repeat offenders under federal maritime drug trafficking statutes. The case immediately raised attention to the persistent challenge narco-submarines pose to maritime security throughout the Eastern Pacific Corridor, placing interdiction strategies and resource allocation under continued evaluation. This prosecution was conducted as part of an organized crime drug enforcement task force's strike force initiative, specifically the Panama Express Strike Force. The mission of the OCDETF Panex Strike Force is to disrupt and dismantle transnational criminal organizations involved in large-scale drug trafficking, money laundering, and related criminal activities. PNEX comprises agents and officers from Homeland Security Investigations, the Coast Guard Investigative Service, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This co-located model enables agents from different agencies to collaborate on intelligence-driven, multi-jurisdictional operations against the most significant drug traffickers and transnational criminal organizations. The successful interdiction of Aguirre Valois and his crew demonstrated the effectiveness of coordinated surveillance and rapid response capabilities when multiple agencies share intelligence and operational resources. Coast Guard operations in the Eastern Pacific have continued to prioritize the detection and interdiction of semi-submersible vessels, with national security cutters like the Waisha maintaining extended patrol deployments in known trafficking corridors. Enhanced radar technology, aerial surveillance capabilities from embarked helicopters, and real-time intelligence sharing with partner nations have improved detection rates, though the low-profile design of semi-submersible vessels continues to present significant challenges. Maritime law enforcement agencies have also emphasized prosecution of repeat offenders under enhanced sentencing guidelines, as demonstrated by the 16-year sentence imposed on Aguirre Valois for his second conviction. Aguirre Valois' case does not exist in a vacuum. It highlights a vulnerability that experts warn is a growing threat to maritime security throughout the Americas and beyond. The use of semi-submersible vessels for drug trafficking dates back to the early 1990s, when crude fiberglass boats capable of transporting several hundred kilograms began appearing along Colombia's Pacific coast. By 2009, United States Coast Guard officials estimated that narco submarines were responsible for transporting approximately one-third of cocaine smuggled into the United States via maritime routes. The vessels have evolved significantly since their initial appearance, progressing from basic wooden frames covered with cloth to sophisticated fiberglass and carbon fiber constructions capable of carrying multiple tons of cocaine across thousands of nautical miles. Colombian authorities intercepted 31 semi-submersible vessels in 2021, an increase from 23 in 2019, indicating sustained production despite interdiction efforts. The Colombian Navy has interdicted over 228 narco submarines since 1993, when formal tracking began. Submarine construction has also spread geographically, with vessels discovered in waters off Suriname, Brazil, Venezuela, Guyana, and even Europe, where the first narco submarine was intercepted off the coast of Galicia, Spain, in 2019, carrying 3 tons of cocaine from Colombia. Some vessels now feature electric propulsion systems, extended range fuel capacity, and full submersibility for short periods, demonstrating continuous technological advancement. The case of Henry Aguirre Valois serves as a stark illustration of what happens when financial incentives collide with criminal opportunity, and how repeat offenders can undermine maritime security despite previous convictions. It shows in clear detail the methods transnational criminal organizations use to recruit experienced operators willing to transport bulk quantities of narcotics across international waters, even after serving federal prison sentences. The interception demonstrated both the capabilities and limitations of current maritime interdiction strategies, as detection required coordinated intelligence gathering, advanced surveillance technology, and sustained patrol operations across thousands of square nautical miles of ocean. What are your thoughts on the effectiveness of current strategies to combat narco-submarine trafficking and prevent repeat offenders from returning to criminal operations? Share your perspectives in the comments below. If you found this documentary informative, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more in-depth explorations of often overlooked, lesser-known stories. Who else would you like to see us detail next? Your engagement helps us continue to shed light on otherwise unheard narratives.